one. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to episode 2 of my acting podcast, which still does not have a name. So I was thinking, about what to do for this podcast, and I definitely have an idea. But before we get into that, I just want to set the scene for y'all if you're not currently watching the video. So I'm on my couch in my usual corner, nice and cozy with a little blankie. I got my tea as always. So if there's like a random pause, or if I'm like, oh, tea time, then I'm just drinking some tea. Just like that. So this episode, as you can see by the title, is all about acting technique and my opinions on technique and training. But I kind of realized that, like, the last episode with like the introduction to myself, I told you guys like about like sort of like my beginning journey of like getting into it in like the like very very broad terms, but I didn't really tell you guys why I love acting so much. And I'm positive that like as time goes on with these podcasts, you will come to learn more and more about why I love it so much. Like I know I know that will come into play, but I just wanted to talk a little bit about that right now. So, like many actors, the reason why I fell in love with acting is because it was fun, obviously, but also for me, I kind of saw it as like a safe space. Like, I struggled a lot when I was younger with like feelings of, well, let's just say, just not the nicest of feelings. And acting was my outlet, like I was allowed to express myself and experience these different types of emotions that perhaps it wasn't like encouraged for kids to sort of express. I don't know. I feel like kids are like so like kids are always like, it's always like, oh, don't cry, like don't cry, don't do this, like don't get angry, like that's like that you're not allowed to be angry, like all this kind of stuff. But with acting it was like, no, like I am allowed to feel these emotions. And I think that was really important for me when I was younger, especially, I mean, even now as I'm older. I mean, obviously, like I know how to like handle my feelings. I'm not like, you know, I'm not as like young as I once was, but I love the ability to express myself, which is part of the reason why I am doing this podcast, because I don't know if you can hear my cat meowing, but she wants me to get up and open the closet for her, but like I am set in this corner right now. So, Nora, come here. If I sing, she'll come to me. You guys want to see? A whole new world, a new fantastic point of view. No one to tell us no or where to go or say we're only dreaming. Actually, I wrote a song for her. It goes a little something like this. Hey, little kitty, won't you fit on my way? Hey, little kitty. Well, she's already here, so maybe a following episode I can sing the whole thing for you guys. But anyway, as I was saying, what was I saying? Oh my god, my brain just doesn't work sometimes. Oh, I don't know if you can hear her purring, but she's right here in the mic. Hold on, I literally can't remember what I was talking about. Oh yeah, just like why I love acting. So that like it like giving me this outlet to express myself. Um, but also, I think that human connection is so beautiful. And I really do believe that that's what acting is all about. Is it's just about connecting to others, and that's why I think that acting parallels life so much. Because I mean, one would hope that actors are or would be considered like the most understanding people or the best type of people. And I know that, like, I don't know, like 8, 9 times out of 10, that's not the case, especially with like very successful actors. A lot of them, do develop a certain attitude. Tea break. Don't we love a good ASMR swishing sound? um, but for me personally, I think that like studying acting in the way that I feel about it can help people like become better humans also. I had this like whole idea one time. I was like, I want to like create my own technique basically. Um that's like all about human connection and expressing yourself and all that kind of stuff. And speaking of like technique, to get into what else I want to talk about in this podcast, I I think technique and training is so important. I think it's like possibly the most important thing that an actor needs to do. And of course, I understand that there are like so many people that have like natural talent, natural abilities. And I do like to think that like I have some of that natural talent as well. But the problem is when you don't know how to channel it correctly. Also, like, I don't care how much natural talent a person has. If they're doing a Broadway show and they're performing 8 times a week, no matter how natural your talent is, like, you have to hone your craft. You have to hone your skill. You have to have the technique to be able to withstand doing this 8 times a week. I mean, think about like The Crucible or like A Streetcar Named Desire. These are heavy plays, and you have to know how to connect to what your character is experiencing, and you have to know how to like not allow it to impact your everyday life. I mean, so often when I was younger, I absolutely used like personal experiences um to connect to what my actor or my character was going through. And I do think a lot of times like that can work, and I know that like there are also a lot of acting teachers that would like advise against doing that because of sort of like the danger that can come to like just getting too attached to it and not being able to shake those emotions off at the end of the day. It's extremely important to be able to let go of whatever your character is going through and not bring it home. I mean, there are so many actors, like we think about method acting, and like Keith Ledger with the Joker is just like one example of actors who allowed it to like affect themselves possibly a little bit too much. And I'm not saying that method acting is a bad thing to do. I think that if it works for you, then great. And I also think that like all actors do it to some extent, or at least should do it to some extent. Not in the sense of like go home and stay in character, but like in between takes, definitely I've like if you're going from one take to another one in a film, you should absolutely be staying in that mindset, in that emotion. um I mean, unless you're literally like the Leonardo DiCaprio or like the Jennifer Lawrences out there, where you, like they can just call action and you can just like drop right into it, which in that case, good for you. Okay. You are an outlier and you'll probably be famous one day. But for people like me who, I do have natural talent, but also training has been extremely important to me, I absolutely have to stay in it. I was working on this film one time, um that actually turned out to be a music video. It was a strange situation, and well, we could talk about that in another episode. But in the, I'm gonna call it a film. Oh no, I should just call it a music video because it is a music video. In the music video, my character loses her boyfriend. Like her boyfriend dies, and she's obviously like extremely depressed. I mean, like it makes sense. I mean, my character like kind of took it to the extreme because she like literally chose to end her own life at the end of it. Um, but who knows? Like she could have had no other family, and that could have been the only person she had in this world. You know, gotta create the character and the backstory for ourselves. Hold on, tea time. So essentially, like my point to that, and with talking about like method acting is, I knew it was going to be a long, hard day when we were filming those scenes. And I like started the day sitting at a cafe, um, listening to sad ass music because music helps me a lot with getting in character, and like journaling as the character. And I like started getting into like my feelings, into my bag, so to speak, ahead of time. And then when I got there, like of course I was like happy and smiling. Like I'm not like sobbing in front of this director I'm meeting for the first time. But even with like giving them my honest like Taylor self, I was still also like holding on to that like sensation from the cafe from that morning. And then same thing, like in between takes, like I'm not like goofing around and laughing with the rest of the crew. Like, oh my god, excuse me, I keep burping. Instead I'm staying like in that moment because it's hard. Like I am not, like I said, like I'm not the kind of actor that can just like drop into it immediately. I mean, I have experienced that sometimes, but that's usually like when I'm working with an acting teacher and like we've been working it, and I'm able to do that sometimes. But like a lot of times with like directors, they're not going to like coach you through it. Like you absolutely have to be able to get there on your own, and that's where I think technique comes in. So I primarily stuttered. I primarily studied Sanford Meisner technique, which is based heavily around repetition, as well as like the moment before, and also improvisation. I actually like wrote a whole essay on Meisner in college. Like that's how freaking obsessed I am with technique and with this man. And but of course there's so many other like techniques out there. There's Uta Hagen, which I think is like her 9 questions is so important like for every actor to answer, for like just like background character work. And then Stanislavski, which I didn't study all that much. And then there's Alexander technique. Like there's the method. Like there's so many different acting techniques. So if one doesn't work for you, go look for something else. Like you don't have to be like, oh god, I hate repetition, therefore I hate acting technique. No, like there's sense memory. Like there's this actually it's like newer technique which I was taking a class on. The gentleman's name I believe is John Osborne Hughes. He's in England, and it was all about like, I mean, I'm gonna like definitely botch this, but it was a lot about like seeing the imagery in your mind's eye, and then when you like talk about it, you've already seen it. So like literally close your eyes and like take yourself through this like sort of meditative experience with something that's happening in the scene, or something that you have to see. Like if your character's like talking about, I don't know, like the time that they went to the grocery store and broke up with their boyfriend, like then literally close your eyes and go through this whole thing and see it all happen, see what aisle you're standing in, all this stuff, so that when you then have to talk about it in the scene, you have imagery in your mind and it helps to feel as though it was real. I've found nowadays, like, because I teach at two different performing arts studios, as well as like a day center that supports adults with developmental disabilities. And how can I phrase this? The students at these performing arts studios, the majority of them are not interested in learning technique. And that's fine. Like, I get it. Like, if you're just going to a studio to have fun and you're like, I like acting because I like to play acting games and I like to do fun scenes and I want to hang out with my friends and I want to be silly, like, good on you. I hope you're not going to a freaking conservatory when you graduate high school or thinking that you're going to become an actor, because you're not actually taking it like all that seriously. And that's fine. Like, I'm completely being transparent when I say that's totally fine. You don't have to be a hardcore serious actress like a lot, like some other people are, you know, like I said, like, I'm obsessed with learning technique. Like, I want to be like the best actress that I can be, and I want to learn as much as I can about different techniques and how to implement them, and they work for me and I like them. So that's good. If you don't like a certain technique, go look for another one. Or if you just don't like technique at all, then great. Like, just enjoy doing you. Like, do you, babe? I am all for it. But I just feel as though, like, if you want to be a serious actor, you need to be willing to do the hard work. The work that, like, it's not all fun and games all the time. In fact, I'm usually miserable when I'm doing acting. No. I'm definitely not miserable, but there is definitely, like, a sense of, like, homework that has to be done for the character. Like, memorizing lines, girl, like, that is the first step of, like, doing a scene or, like, working on a character, is memorizing the lines. And there is definitely, like, a whole thing with like, technique and learning your lines, and the fact that you cannot be in the moment with your character, like, truthfully in the moment, if you're worried about your lines. Like, I'm sorry. So I think for me, like, it's interesting because, like I said in the last episode, when I was 15, I started studying at the neighborhood playhouse. And the summer intensives, it wasn't like, let's play a bunch of acting games. I was there from like 9 a.m. to like 5 p.m. and we had lots of different classes. We had movement class, we had voice and speech, we had acting class, we had scene study, we had technique classes. So we would do Meisner classes. People would come in and we would have special workshops on Meisner. So I was learning all of this stuff from a very young age, and I loved it. I was, like, obsessed with it. But it's weird, like, having that experience and then coming and teaching at these performing arts studios where I do now, and feeling like just a little bit like some of the students are not as serious, I guess, about it as I was at that age. But I did ask some of these students, maybe a couple months ago, like, who here is thinking about, like, getting an acting degree in college? Because I kind of wanted to gauge where everybody was, and I think, like, 2 people out of 15 raised their hand. One of them was, but one of them, like, was gonna minor in acting, because she wanted to teach, like, elementary acting. And then I think one other person was, like, gonna actually major in it and really study it. Tea time. So I kind of was like, okay, like, I get it. You guys are here to have fun and, like, play fun games and do scenes and act in a fun way instead of, like, really get down to the nitty gritty of it. Because I'm very, very, very happy, I guess, to let them sort of do what they want to do. Obviously, like, I want them to be happy, but I also want them to learn. And like, my whole thing is, if you're hiring me to be an acting teacher, like, yeah, sure, like, I'll play games with you, but like if you really want like my skills to come into play, then have me teach technique. Like, that is where I thrive. Um so yeah, and then also like, I think like training and technique kind of go hand in hand. Like, it's important for actors to continue training even after college, which is something that I've tried to like keep up with and uphold. Of course, it's classes are expensive, but I also know like that can't be like a what is it like that can't be like an excuse all the time. But I've definitely taken a few classes since I graduated with my BFA, and I love it. I mean, like, on camera especially, I love on camera classes. Um I love working on camera. I think like the technique for on camera is completely different from the technique for like stage acting, and it's beautiful. Like, oh my god, just like the subtleties that you have to have for on camera, it's phenomenal. Like, I wish that like we could just like I wish I could just like take all of you guys and go to an on-camera class together to just show you, because I mean, if I was to like talk about everything about that, like, I we could be here for another like hour and a half, and I'm not trying to keep y'all that long. um but yeah, my point is that like, I just feel as though technique and training is super important for actors. Um, and that's about it. That's all I have to say for today's episode. I hope it was a fun listen. Let me know if you have any questions. You can always reach out to me. I have an Instagram account, which is acting teacher Taylor. That is like my that's my like teaching acting account, but I'm going to be like mostly answering questions, if you have any questions, through that account. But anyways, thank you guys so much for listening to this podcast. I hope you have a beautiful day, and I will see you next time. Bye.